This is a review of Chapter 5A, Solving Systems of Equations. Today we will determine the best method for solving your system of equations. This is Standard 9.0, and if you'd like to follow along, it's on page 280 in your textbook. So today we're going to talk about the methods for solving systems of equations. Remember that there are three methods. The first method that we used was called graphing. Okay, there's a little table. So the first method was graphing. The second method that we used was called a substitution. Okay? And finally, the last method we used was called elimination. And there were many methods of elimination. We had addition, we have subtraction, which is really just distributing a negative and then adding. And of course, there's multiplication, which we also multiplied through and then we added the equations together. Now, when is the best time to use each of the methods? Graphing, the best time to really use graphing is when we have to estimate the solution, because graphing is not always exact and you won't always have graph paper and a ruler next to you to graph it. So the best time to use that would be when we have to estimate where the solution might be. The second method, substitution, we use if one of the variables has a coefficient of 1 or -1, or if they simply have already solved one for you. Like if they already have x equals or y equals, they've already solved one, use substitution. And finally, the last method would be elimination. Now, elimination we want to use when all your equations are lined up and they do not have coefficients of 1 or -1. So keep that in mind. You want to use multiplication if the coefficients are different and you want to make them opposites of each other, then you want to use multiplication to do that, and then of course add the equations together. Okay, so what we're going to do today in our review is we're going to go over, I have two example problems and then we have a set of practice problems for you. Okay, so have that paper and pencil handy. So first, our example problems. Okay. The examples state, determine the best method to solve each system of equations. Then they want you to actually solve them. Okay, so let's take our first example. 4x plus 3y equals 19 and 3x minus 4y equals 8. Okay, now first thing is figure out, well, what's the best method to solve this? Take a look. Nothing is solved for you, so we know that we're not going to use substitution since we don't have an x equals or y equals given to us. And if you notice, the x's, they are lined up, the y's are lined up, and your equal signs are lined up, so we will use elimination. Now, we'd need to make sure that the coefficients are opposites of each other. Right now we don't have that, so we're going to use elimination multiplication. Elimination multiplication. So that means we'd have to get them to be the opposite of each other. Now, as I'm taking a look at this, in my opinion, I would solve for the y's to get the y's the same. The reason would be because they're already opposites. One's a positive, one's a negative. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. To do that, I need to find a number that they both have in common. They both have 3 and 4, so I would say 12 is their least common multiple. So I'm going to multiply the first equation by 4 to get 12 for the y. So 4 times 4x plus 3y equals 19. And for the second equation, I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 3, so I get 3x minus 4y equals 8. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and multiply it. And on the first one, I'll get 16x plus 12y equals 76. And distributing the 3 out on the second equation, I would get 9x minus 12y equals 24. Now you'll notice I have one positive and one negative, so I'm going to go ahead and add these together now. So add these two together, okay? Lined up already, so 16x plus 9x gives me 25x. These two will cancel out, exactly what we want, elimination. And this is a nice 100. So let's divide by 25 now, and I get x equals 4. Now remember, I'm only halfway there. I've only got my x answer. I need to find my y now. So I'm going to pick one of the equations. I'll go with the second one. Let's go with the second one. It has a smaller end number there. So what I'm going to do is take this, I'm going to replace it now into one of the original equations. I'm going to take 3x minus 4y equals 8, and I'm going to replace this x in right here for that x. And so I get 3 times the quantity of 4 minus 4y equals 8, which gives me 12 minus 4y equals 8. And of course I want to isolate my variable, so minus 12 on both sides. So I get negative 4y must equal negative 4, and divide by negative 4 to get my y all by itself, so y equals 1. So now that I have my x and my y, I can answer the actual statement. It says, determine the best method. I did that. Elimination. Multiplication was the best method, and what was my solution? I had 4, 1. So be sure to write your ordered pair. This would be my final answer. Okay? Let's go ahead and try the second example now. The second example, I have y equals 4x plus 11 and 3x minus 2y equals negative 7. If I take a look at that one, you'll notice y is already solved. So guess which method you want to use for this one? Did I hear substitution? If so, you are correct. Let's use substitution on this one. Okay? So we're going to use substitution method, which means since y is already solved, I'm going to take this y, which is 4x plus 11, and I'm going to replace it for the y right here. So I'm going to rewrite 3x minus 2y equals negative 7. I'm going to replace this y. So then it becomes 3x minus 2 times a quantity of, be sure to use parentheses, otherwise distributing will be missed, which will cause you to miss the whole problem. Okay? So now I'm going to distribute my negative 2. So I get 3x minus 8x minus 22 equals negative 7. Combine my like terms. 3x minus 8x is 5x. Minus 22 is negative 7. Okay, and I need to get that x term by itself, so I'm going to add the 22 on both sides. So I get 5x equals 15. How nice. So divide by 5 and I get x equals 3. So that gives me one of my answers. So I'm halfway there right now. I'm going to take this and go back and replace it into one of my original equations. So if you take a look, you'll notice this one's y equals. All I need to do is replace my x back into that. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to replace now. And the original equation is y equals 4x plus 11. I'm going to replace the x with what I found, which was 3. And you know what? I'm sure you missed it too. I just caught something. Go back. 3x minus 8x is really negative 5. So this should have been a negative all along, which means that this should be a negative 3. Did you catch that? So this should be a negative 3, which makes this a negative 12 plus 11, which makes it negative 1. I'm glad I was checking along the way. Were you checking too? So then I get negative 3, negative 1. And what method did we use? We used substitution. So our final answer would be what method we used? Substitution. And the ordered pair solution is negative 3, negative 1. And that's it. Now, I've had many questions about how to check if something is correct. If you're not sure if you're doing this correctly, for example, here I caught an error myself. If you want to check, what you do is you take your solution, okay, and this is so you can check. To check, you take your solution and replace it into one of the equations. Now, since we used the second equation to get our negative 1, I'm going to plug in both x and y into my second equation, which was 3x minus 2 times y equals negative 7. And I'm going to replace both x and y in here and see if it works. If it works, then it will work for both equations. So I get 3 times negative 3 minus 2 times negative 1 equals negative 7. I get negative 9 plus 2 equals negative 7. And in fact, negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. So I know this is a check. It will work. Okay? So if you ever get stuck and you want to check your answer, you can replace both of them into one of the equations to see if it works. Okay? So on to the practice. Now it's your turn. You've been watching me. So now it's your turn to try these. Okay? And these, by the way, will be the problems that your teacher will check in class tomorrow. Okay? So the practice problems. you're going to determine the best method to solve each system of equations, just like the examples that I just completed. Then, after you're done determining which method you're going to use that method and solve the equations. Okay? So we have 4 practice problems for you to complete and bring into class tomorrow. Okay, be sure to copy those down. See you in class tomorrow.